tragedy has a prologue, a moment where the ordinary world cracks open and something dark slithers out. On 2025, a family loaded into a car and drove from the sprawling chaos of Lagos towards Abuja. It was supposed to be a journey meant to heal a fractured marriage and to heal two families that were drifting apart. A traditional peace mission, an intervention rooted in cultural tradition meant to save a marriage and ease tension between two families that were already pulling in opposite directions. But modern history has its own dark, unresolved mysteries. Less than 48 hours later, that peace mission didn't just fail, it dissolved into a web of blood, missing bodies, and a double death toll that has left a nation questioning what is real and what is a carefully staged lie. At the heart of this storm are two young men who shared an apartment area. Oluwapelumi Tolani Adebayo, a Deputy Superintendent of the Nigerian Correctional Service, and Ayobami Aiyepeku, a 26-year-old apprentice photojournalist. Within a 48-hour window, both would be dead. One would be found dismembered and dumped in the bush, the other naked in a locked hotel room next to a cryptic suicide note. Was this a tragic, violent breakdown or a meticulously orchestrated double execution and a political cover-up? For the Adebayo family, the journey began on July 21, 2025. Following the customs of the Okun heritage, Pelumi's elderly parents undertook a journey to the wife's family to apologize, calm the waters, and save the marriage after an altercation had occurred between Pelumi and his wife, Lauren Onoja. But this wasn't just any family. Lauren's uncle and guardian was Chief Edward David Onoja, the powerful former deputy governor of Kogi State. What happened inside that Abuja residence depends entirely on whose side of the room you sat on. According to the Adebayo family, the reception was chillingly hostile. They claimed that the former deputy director was visibly angered, dismissed a traditional gesture of peace, and flatly declared the marriage dead. The elder Adebayo, then 71, reported that the meeting had been shaken. But Edward Onoja paints a completely different picture. In a public statement, he insisted that the two-hour meeting was pleasant and collaborative. However, he dropped a bombshell accusation. He claimed his niece had endured years of severe domestic violence, only reaching out to him when Pelumi allegedly threatened her life with a knife. Onoja claimed both families ultimately agreed to a 6-month structured separation and rehabilitation plan for Pelumi. The elderly Adebayos left the meeting and began their drive back to Lagos. They thought the crisis was contained, they thought everything was over. They had no idea that back in Lokoja, the fuse had already been lit. It is Tuesday evening, July 22nd, 2025. The clock reads roughly 7:30 p.m. Inside a media studio opposite the Kogi State government house, Aiyepeku is sitting at a desk quietly editing video and photos with a colleague. Suddenly, the door opens. Standing there is Pelumi Adebayo. He looks at Ayo and asks for a simple neighborly favor. Can you step outside and help me for a moment at my poultry farm? Ayo agrees, stands up, and walks out into the dark night. He expects a routine task. He has no idea he's walking into an ambush. According to a horrified witness inside the studio, the moment Ayo stepped into the yard, Pelumi raised a heavy iron object. He struck Ayo on the head repeatedly, rendering him instantly unconscious. Through the window, the colleague watches in sheer paralysis as Pelumi drags Ayo's limp body towards a deep freezer, lifts inside and shuts the lid. He then loads the entire freezer into the back of a white unregistered Hilux van. The witness screams, frantically mobilizing local vigilantes. But before they can block the exit, the Hilux roars away into the night. Minutes later, the timeline turns completely chaotic. While the vigilantes are searching the blood-stained poultry stall, headlights cut through the dark. The Hilux van actually drives back into the compound. Pelumi sees the crowd, realizes he's been caught, and slams on the gas. The vigilante give chase through the streets of Lokoja. Security operatives open fire, shooting at the tires of the van. The truck swerves, crashes and grinds to a halt. But before the dust settles, Pelumi leaps from the driver's seat and vanishes into the dark brush. When the police inspect the abandoned vehicle, they find the interior slick with human blood. They find the machete believed to be the weapon. They also find the deep freezer, but the freezer is completely empty. Ayo's body is gone. For nearly 48 hours, the city is gripped by fear. Where is the missing photojournalist and where is the fleeing correctional officer? The answer arrives at midday on Thursday, July 24th at the Abida 115 Guest Inn. A hotel steward walks up to a room to clean it after checkout time. There is no answer. The police are called, a carpenter forces the door open and they step inside. The scene they encounter is deeply unsettling. Lying on the bed is the prime suspect, Pelumi Adebayo. He is entirely naked, cold and alone. Next to his body sits a bottle of Coca-Cola, a bottle of sniper pesticide, his official Correctional Service ID card, and a handwritten note. The note, written in stark, jagged block letters, reads, "Hopelessness, emptiness, death is bliss, over the edge, God forgive my soul, don't tell my son what his father did, impulse control disorder." Now let's pause on that last line, impulse control disorder. Why would a man allegedly writing his final words include a clinical psychiatric diagnosis in parentheses? In psychology, impulse control disorder isn't just being impatient. It's a severe chronic failure to resist an impulse, a drive, or temptation to perform an act that is harmful to oneself or others. People suffering from severe ICD experience a rising unbearable wave of internal tension. The only way to release that tension is to explode into action, whether through explosive violence, destruction, or self-harm. Afterward, they are often hit with a crushing wave of guilt, regret, and emptiness. To be clear, ICD is not a legal defense for murder, but it may explain the psychology behind the alleged suicide note. It could be a desperate self-diagnosed explanation for why a man with a promising career and a young son would snap so completely. To the police, that note was an ultimate psychological puzzle piece, a confession from a man who knew his mind had snapped. And days later, the tragedy seemed complete when search teams located Ayyepeku's badly decomposing body dumped in the thick bush near the WAEC office in Lokoja. It seemed like the case was closed, a horrific murder-suicide fueled by mental illness and domestic collapse. Except if you look closer, the piece doesn't really fit the puzzle, does it? It just shatters it. The Adebayo family refuses to accept the official narrative. They claim that Pelumi did not kill Ayo and that he did not kill himself. They allege a brilliant, brutal, politically backed frame job. Now, let's look at the conspiracy theories and the anomalies surrounding the crime scene. First, the missing digital footprint. The family's independent investigation claims that Pelumi's mobile devices actually went completely dark hours before he supposedly and suspectedly checked into the hotel room. If he was watching TV at the reception and checking involuntarily, where were his phones and why had his digital life already been erased? Secondly, the cleaned crime scene. When Pelumi was found, he was completely unclothed. The family alleges that his body had been meticulously washed and cleaned before the police arrived, a tactic frequently used in homicide cases to destroy defensive DNA, fabric transfer, or external injuries. Third, the toxicology paradox. The most explosive claim comes from the medical reports. The family alleges that despite the presence of sniper pesticide bottle on the nightstand in the hotel room, initial toxicology tests conducted at the National Hospital in Abuja showed no trace of poison in Pelumi's system. Furthermore, Edward Onoja's own engaged pathologist countered that the body showed no signs of strangulation, stabbing, or gunshot. If there was no poison, no trauma, no strangulation, how then did Pelumi die? Fourth, the staged narrative. The family believes that both Pelumi and Ayo were victims of a premeditated double homicide carried out on a property linked to the political elite. They allege that Pelumi was executed, his body moved to a budget hotel and that he has never even heard of, and the room staged with a manufactured suicide note and pesticide to provide an easy explanation for a double murder. It is important to note that the police have not confirmed any of these claims and that the Onoja family denies all the allegations. Chief Onoja has vehemently fired back that these theories, calling them baseless, malicious, and fake narratives, are designed to ruin his record of public service. He maintains that he was not even in Lokoja at the time and he has cooperated fully with the homicide department, and that the text on the suicide note itself speaks for itself. But the tragedy did not just end with the discovery of two bodies. 21 days later, the Aiyepeku family suffered another devastating blow. On August 12, 2025, Chief James Aiyepeku, the father of Ayobami Aiyepeku, passed away. The cause of death was a stroke. It was reportedly triggered by the shock of his son's gruesome murder. A father, still reeling from the loss of his child, had his heart give out under the weight of grief. His son, Timothy Aiyepeku, the elder brother of the slain photojournalist, recounted the painful timeline to the press. He said, "On Wednesday, August 6th, after rushing out to complete the necessary arrangements towards the release of Ayobami's corpse for burial, I returned home to the news that my father had fallen and was hospitalized. Despite initial signs of recovery, my father's condition worsened and he eventually succumbed to his illness on Tuesday, August 12th. In the span of just 3 weeks, the Aiyepeku's family had lost two of its members. The son was violently taken and the father heartbroken beyond repair." Timothy Aiyepeku, now carrying the weight of both losses, made a plea to the authorities. He said, "The family is urging the police to leave no stone unturned in their investigation, trusting that justice will be served. We believe that the police can do the job. They should just put in the needed resources to see that justice is achieved for my brother." Two deaths, one family, one devastating timeline. The murder of a son and the death of a father who could not bear the pain of living without him. Two families are left shattered, staring across a gulf of bitter accusations. The Aiyepeku's family is mourning a brilliant young creative whose life was stolen and dumped in the bush. The Adebayo's family is fighting to clear the name of a law enforcement officer who they believe was silenced by the powerful. The file now sits deep within the Force Criminal Investigation Department in Abuja. Whether the final report will bring the truth or permanent silence remains to be seen. In the shadows of Lokoja, did Pelumi Adebayo succumb to the darkness of his own mind, or did someone else write his final words in the dark? Rest in peace, Aiyepeku and Oluwapelumi Adebayo. This is Shadows of the Past, remembering those the world has forgotten.